Again, we request everyone to please settle down as our program will begin in a few minutes. Thank you. Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, DFA officials, the Academe, colleagues from foreign service posts abroad, and participants joining us through Facebook live stream, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The Foreign Service Institute welcomes you all to today's Mabini dialogue on safeguarding ASEAN's natural wealth, the role of biodiversity in regional growth. I am Jason Cesar, Research Officer from the FSI, and it is my honor to be your moderator today. This Mabini dialogue will explore the role of biodiversity in ASEAN's regional growth amid the need, emphasizing the need for stronger conservation strategies amid economic and geopolitical challenges. Special attention will be given to the Philippines' strategic role in championing biodiversity as a key pillar of sustainable development, especially with our upcoming chairship of the ASEAN next year. And so we are honored to be joined here today by a highly respected expert in the field of biodiversity governance. Delivering today's talk is one of the Philippines' most prolific legal experts and policy specialists in biodiversity law, climate governance, and international environmental treaty negotiations. In various capacities, he has worked with the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity and the Global Environment Facility, the Biodiversity Management Bureau of the DNR, and the United Nations Development Program. He has coordinated initiatives and projects on the access and benefit sharing of genetic resources, the establishment of a traditional knowledge digital library among ASEAN member states, the harmonization of international and local policies in support of the protection of the indigenous peoples' traditional knowledge, and the establishment of systems to monitor the use of Philippine genetic resources. For 13 years, he was the legal advisor to the DNR BMB, where he helped develop policies and represented the Philippines and ASEAN in several iterations of the Conference of the Parties, or COP, of the UNFCCC and the Convention on Biological Diversity. Apart from his extensive legal and policy work, he was an educator at the Mindanao State University in General Santos, a published author of a book entitled Paris Agreement on Climate Change Explained, and a speaker in countless international forums on biodiversity and climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give a big warm round of applause to our speaker today, Attorney Elpidio Ping V. Peria. Sir?
Thank you. I didn't realize that this will be such a big audience. I'm used to, in intimate settings, and I'm told this is also online. So where are you? Like and subscribe, di ba? Yun yung sinasabi. After watching this. So I think I understand we have guests from other embassies, no? So di tayo pwedeng magtagalog dito at magkwento ng mga Hilang. So I will do my best to give justice to the topic. I'm speaking, of course, from General Santos City. I work with several NGOs, and as such, member of an NGO got pulled in, because of the Rio Summit, 1992. That opened up the space for business and NGOs and government to work together in treaty negotiations. Of course, business was not that much interested then, because they always ask, why do you go there? Do you get, do we get money there? I said, not yet, but it will be a long process. So, but anyway, so we stayed in that course, and lo and behold, I'm still here, and somehow those experiences and lessons and scoldings from the one senior to me then are now being distilled into lessons. But maybe in the Q&A, no, we'll get there. No? So now, this photo is from a project. Now, I was before also with the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity from 2018 to 2020, before the pandemic, although of course they retained me as a technical consultant. But at that time, I was part of running a project on biodiversity-based products. So this is the road, I think, that one's going to Vientiane, but the other side goes to China. And that's where they sell their biodiversity-based products, basically bamboo. That's in the Namha Natural Conservation Area, like a protected area. So in the buffer zones, that's where we packaged biodiversity-based products, basically bamboo, into furniture and handicrafts. And that's a part of the ASEAN-German cooperation. Yeah, of course, ACB has a lot of other projects since then. No? So, okay. So my talk will just be in 4 parts. Of course, feel free to interrupt or maybe raise a question. No? Each time a slide is not that clear, but I will do my best. No? Because the topic is safeguarding ASEAN's wealth of biodiversity. So I'm thinking, anyway, I will, in my peroration, I will just talk where I'm coming from. No? So let's start with this one. No? You can get this at this report. No? I think this is the latest that the ASEAN has published. And the point of this discussion here is that each time they go out, the scientists, they discover new species. So there's still a lot of biodiversity that's unexplored. Though, of course, we have the usual when we prepare speeches for our executive director, the standard, what's that? 3% land area and 20% biodiversity. That's 19.3, I think, percent. So that's the formula. And of course, I called this from this. This is the latest publication on biodiversity prepared with the ACB, and I called from some items there, some of the resources. So you can see that ASEAN is indeed very well endowed in terms of natural resources. That's forests. There's aquatic resources. Actually, there's a lot, no, of resources, of which a lot of ASEAN peoples rely on for their livelihood. And of course, genetic diversity. Genetic diversity is also a key indicator of the richness of the biodiversity of the ASEAN region as a whole. And of course, birds and mammal species. But I think this is the one important characteristic. You forget all the other things, because that's all about numbers. But this is about the rarity, or I mean, the uniqueness of biodiversity in the ASEAN region as a whole. Of course, there's also pecking order. Like, of course, Philippines, you always say, no, but most of the resources in the Philippines can only be found in the Philippines. And of course, Indonesia will say they are, in terms of number, it's Indonesia, no? Of course, down the line, Malaysia. And of course, those three are the ones that are part of the mega diverse group. And they also became part of this negotiating group later, no? on access to genetic resources. But this is one key characteristic that I think you should always remember. No? But first, I think, before we proceed, this is one topic, one framing that I taught my students in the MSU, General Santos City Graduate School. How do we understand all the mess of these instruments, laws, and even local initiatives, because I also advise NGOs. And in fact, just recently, some groups funded by some NGOs tackled how will their local innovations crack the system and foster changes. So this is how it's done. No? So landscape, no? So imagine the world that there are three things that you need to understand where events are happening. At the landscape level, landscape is not the land, no, but the lay of the international structures that are above the country level. And then, so the one at the middle is the meso, the middle part, where all the policies that we are having are being set up in compliance with those landscape level instruments. And these innovations are the unique initiatives of various communities that if you scale them up, it will foster changes in the what we call socio-technical, socio-political regime. And now you may ask, so what's the role of ASEAN there? ASEAN, I would say, is those who hated ASEAN before, the NGOs, they say ASEAN is a policy launderer. But for me, I would say ASEAN is a facilitator of the landscape pressures, of the landscape models that here, that I will tackle in my discussion, like the Convention on Biological Diversity, Nagoya Protocol, KMGBF, that mouthful of an acronym is Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So that you may sound intelligent, you should, so the other side, oh, we will wonder what are you talking about. Just try to drop that acronym, KMGBF, and let the other side wonder. But of course, you will know that that acronym once you listen to my discussion. And of course, this one on FAO. And then, of course, UNFCCC. So all these instruments lay down guidelines, soft law instruments, I would say. And somehow that exerts pressure on the national laws, regulations, guidelines. And somehow the movement of this deep lines to this is the shift that's supposed to happen when you want to push for, it used to be called sustainability transition back in the year 2001, first time I read it, but now it's called just transition. Of course, that's the word being tackled, bandied around in the UNFCCC. In the Plastic Pollution Treaty, negotiations are also being discussed there. Though I'm sad that it's just being reduced to green jobs. But it's supposed to be broader than that. It's supposed to result in the transformation of the overall socio-technical regime. It's the way we do things, how we base our policies that guides the rationale. And that's the entire thinking there. So the totality of that is the entire socio-technical regime. And the role of ASEAN is right in the middle, like it somehow translates all those international instruments to what is feasible or doable at the ASEAN level. And once it's set as an ASEAN set of guidelines or plans of action or implementation plans, then that will be easier for countries to follow. So that's why you change the regime. Like, for example, you want to push for sustainable agriculture. Of course, we have our own law on sustainable agriculture, but ASEAN has its own plan of action on sustainable agriculture, incorporating the current thinking of experts around the world, no? And adapts it to the local conditions of ASEAN, and somehow it makes it easier for countries to implement a kind of a sustainable agriculture policy that approximates what is being called for by the international frameworks. So I hope you might find this useful when things get confusing and you will wondering how can we break through. Of course, this is a good framework also for those who are innovating a lot of models on the ground. No? So example, blue economy, you want to pilot somehow a novel way of protecting a specific marine species, take into account traditional knowledge of a community, then the way you will manage and expand and scale up that initiative is something that can be replicated, and the lessons, no, done, distilled at the national level, and that's how you foster change. So it takes a lot of time. I think usually sustainability transition takes place from 20 to 30 years. Of course, we have a challenge of the political reality, and that's why you need to have the patience of job, you know, to really cut out the noise and be focused on what you are aiming for. So let's start with one example, no? So CBD, of course, I included already the Nagoya Protocol, but this is one international instrument. It's a framework agreement, no? It lays down general ideas on how to approach things on conservation, sustainable use, and the third goal, no, fair and equitable benefit sharing from the utilization of genetic resources. And imagine, no, I highlighted this Article 6 to 21 as the key provisions that guides countries, parties to the CBD, on what they will do, no, to achieve the goal of conservation, sustainable use, and fair, equitable sharing of benefits. And to coordinate action globally, the CBD parties came up with this back in 2002, no? Strategic plan for the Convention on Biological Diversity to achieve by 2010 a significant reduction. Back then, they put the number. I think they wanted to reduce a certain number rate of biodiversity loss. But when the assessment happened in going to this, they removed the references to a number. Much like the FAO, no, the Global Plan of Action to Address Hunger. I think back in the early iteration of that Global Plan of Action in '96, they said they wanted to cut in half the number of people who are hungry. But when reckoning time came and they're still not even halfway to the goal of halving the hunger of all people all over the world, they tweaked that. So, well, thank the wordsmithers, no, for fine-tuning. But again, this is the HE targets, which is what's called for by this strategic plan. But again, because this is only until 2020, and back in November 2018, COP 14, Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, they decided to develop something, no? Again, another instrument. That's the year, I think after that, this is in 2019, if the climate change has the IPCC, this is the IPCC of the biodiversity crowd, no? So IPBES, that's the intergovernmental policy body for, I think, biodiversity and ecosystem services. So that's it. So somehow look to this for some authoritative data on what's the state of play, on the science behind all the things that you will undertake at the policy level. Though, of course, this is also another political process that there can be another session of the FSI. But this is the overview of the replacement for the IHE targets. It's target 1 to 23. No? This is another graphic that points out to the target. So somehow, this is the landscape level instrument or guide which countries have to follow. It's called then post-2020 because that's supposed to replace the IHE target. So it's not a treaty, a non-binding instrument, but it is a guide for action, especially for parties, other MEAs, private sector CSOs, IPLCs, women and youth, to inform the development of their NBSAPs. So NBSAPs is the national instrument that puts into action all these commitments. And of course, the reporting. So you do something, you implement it, and you report. And that's how the global instruments assess whether we are doing well. Like in climate, are we near the 1.5 target? No. We're way behind that. and with one country exiting, it will get worse. But of course, let's focus on what's doable. So again, we have the Kunming-Montreal GBF. No? So that's one. No? And now, how is it translated into ASEAN? So we have here this one, the ASEAN Biodiversity Plan, and I was able to work closely with ACB in meeting AMS, no, to develop this target. So it's like all those targets 1 to 23, we'd like to call it ASEANized, like adapted to ASEAN local realities and priorities. So for example, Target 3, because Target 3 is the most famous because there's a campaign on it. They say it's 30 by 30. They're always asking, what's 30? 30% by 2030. But some will understand like 30 by in 30 years. Much like before, no? Philippines had this Philippines 2000, the Science and Technology for Development. The joke of my bosses there in the Senate, that it will happen in 2,000 years. So that's the way, those are the politicians then, my boss. No? So anyway, this is a sampling. No? You can always look at these targets, you can look at the website. So that's how all those global policies have been ASEANized. So, and of course, Target 11, Target 13. Of course, there's been a lot of talk, nature-based solutions, but I would like to bring in ABS. Because nature-based solutions, there's a lot of work there. In fact, EU has initiated a program of work with the ASEAN sociocultural community, and they're set to engage in a plan of action, but I think it will be several years before results will come out. And of course, ABS is the access and benefit sharing provision, which calls for like whenever you access a resource, you need to give benefits back to the community. But anyway, of course, we have the Kunming-Montreal GBF, we have the ASEAN Biodiversity Plan. This is an example of Philippine commitment, no, to the CBD. This is not yet final because it's still being updated or finalized. It's supposed to have been released in CAP 16, but somehow, so this is what it has been before, no? All these plans, wherein all plans of all government agencies are laid out. Of course, you may ask, are they being implemented? Yes, they try to implement it to the best that they can, of course, subject to political reality and funding constraints. But at least there's a guide that you can ask government, oh, what are you doing on this? No? So that's PBSAP. They have a nice graphic on, So you see, all of these PBSAP goals have been laid out in this graphic, wherein it is understood to be also in compliance with Philippine Development Plan, the SDGs, and of course the National Adaptation Plan. Where's Nico? I think Nico, this could be useful guide for your paper. And these are the themes. So the government has organized the various targets into various themes. So if you're concerned on wildlife species conservation, you have targets 4, 5, 9, and 6. And if you want, after for the resources, of course, target 5, we call it means of implementation. Ditas would always say, Ditas Miller, the one who mentored us in all these treaty negotiations, means of implementation does not only include finance, but also, more importantly, technology transfer. But I think most negotiators shy away from that topic because it's so complicated. It's not for the faint-hearted. So anyway, another global instrument is the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. So this is another FAO body that also looks at what will happen on biodiversity for food and agriculture. So it just met last week of March. And you know what? The chair that was appointed recently for the next CGRFA is a Filipina, Paz Benavides, the Assistant Secretary of DA, and also my classmate. So anyway, my classmate at UP Law. No? So again, global instruments, code, standards, treaty, global plan. So these are the instruments that the CGRFA develops for countries to follow, no? So, or to pick and choose, basically, no? Because they are just plans of action. They are generally soft law instruments. So these are the sample of code, standards, and guidelines. I cut this from the website of the CGRFA. You can look at it. That's the treaty process. This is actually another ABS instrument. There are 64 plant species wherein you can get it without negotiating for terms and conditions because it's already standardized. There's the SMTA, so that's the international treaty. And then, of course, global plans of action for aquatic genetic resources, forest, plant genetic resources. I think the one that they're trying to develop is the one on microbes, because that's the one that will be important to power all of the things that we want to do, no? Especially develop further, no, into industries. And of course, if you look at those CGRFA, what is ASEAN doing? So again, ASEAN is the policy facilitator or the policy conduit of all those instruments at the global level, and this is what you can see at the Food and Agriculture and Forestry division, no, of ASEAN. Of course, ASEAN has many divisions. You're familiar with that. I'm just highlighting the various groups that tackle all these issues. Working group on livestock, agricultural research and development, etc., etc. In fact, part of this group, back in 2023, we put them together. We invited them, along with the ASEAN Working Group on Nature Conservation and Biodiversity, to develop the implementation plan for sustainable agriculture. And happily, they participated and developed further specifics. So I think that's how the ASEAN brings down to the level of the ASEAN member states all those global instruments. So I think it might be good for you to really understand that process, because that's where you can make interventions that will be useful at of course, you're at the Philippines. You have to coordinate also with our officials, because it is our officials at these ministries who attend these meetings and they give inputs. Like, for example, on One Health. One Health are mainly Department of Health people, and our experiences in how we address One Health. No? Of course, example there is COVID-19. So all of these are the ones integrated. We have this ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. That's how we recover from COVID-19. But I don't know how much of that is being discussed. Maybe you want to have another session on that to get an update whether most of that have been funded. No? But I would like to get back to the latest CGRFA, Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, because there they discussed ABS and digital sequence information. And I would like to zero in on that as one way in which ASEAN can leverage its endowment on biological diversity. And again, back in November 2024, there's this thing adopted called on DSI. So what is DSI, you would say? Huh? So what was adopted at COP16 is this thing called modalities. Modalities for operationalizing the multilateral mechanism. What is that multilateral mechanism? It's the mechanism. Maybe it's the mechanism wherein those who are using DSI are asked to contribute to this Cali Fund, and that Cali Fund is the one that will be distributed to the countries, to the parties to the CBD, and that's what they can use for their own developmental priorities. So DSI, what is DSI, you may ask? So let me go back. So again, DSI is also called digital sequence. Another term for that is gene sequence data. So again, this is all of this. DSI is all of this. Nucleic acid sequence, information on the sequence assembly, information on gene expression, down the line. No? So the totality of that is the gene sequence, digital sequence information or gene sequence data. Of course, that's the one being gathered by scientists now to understand what they are working on. And this is a graphical representation. Usually, we only have this one at the genetic resource. In fact, we start at the biological resource. You gather a plant, a microbe, an animal, but you tease out its constituent parts. That's the genetic resource. But you further break it down, and that's where these are. No? Genomic data, transcriptomic data, proteomic data, and all those things. The totality of that's DSI. And that's the one currently being used or examined, extracted. Of course, not all scientists do that. There's a special group of scientists who do that. Again, this is another understanding of what is DSI. And of course, this is from a Swiss federal office, no? There are lawyers there. Because they think that when you have that DSI, you don't have to get access to the actual genetic resource because you can get this from the databases. In fact, with the recent trend on artificial intelligence, what you call this, machine learning platforms, they use these databases to look at those combinations of sequences and perhaps train the machine learning algorithms. No? And this is where the DSI currently in place. No? This is NCBI. This is in the US. This is in the Europe, and this is in Japan. So these are the various databases on which all of the genetic resources of all countries of the world, no? Not only at the ASEAN. So this is the one that's being addressed by that decision. And again, this is an interesting statistic that indeed there are the data from all those databases are used, you know, look at the data, 34 million times per year, used by more than 10 to 15 million unique users. And of course, this is from 2022 article, and it could be much more now, no? And why is that? Because back in 2022, there's already this multilateral mechanism for benefit sharing. So there's already an agreement that those who use DSI, they're supposed to provide to share the benefits, no? Non-monetary and monetary benefits, and there's this global fund. And again, the fund now is called Kali Fund because it was adopted, it was launched last month in Rome, in February when there was the resumed COP16, but the fund in which all contributions from the use of DSI, it's called Cali Fund because the decision was adopted at Cali, Colombia. But that's the idea. That's the idea of countries like, of course, the Philippines getting benefits from the use of its genetic resources, of which the digital sequence information is currently lodged in all those databases. But the authors of this article that I quoted, DSI capacity building enables leapfrogging towards the bioeconomy. because somehow when we get to do capacity building, we develop our capacity on what to do with these gene sequences. And again, we go down to the thing called bioeconomy. And bioeconomy is a broad concept. It has been started by the EU, I think, back in 2008. Even Malaysia had a policy directive back in 2010, no, on bioeconomy. But it is all things that comes out from research on biological resources. Starts with genomics, understanding what's in the anyway, so when you look at the resource at the genetic level, you can do a lot of things with it. Go into manufacturing, waste management, food security, biofuel development, antimicrobial and pharmaceutical production. So there are many things that you can do with genetic resources. And this is, again, another understanding where you need to address your concerns in energy, food, and material supply chains and develop bioproducts. So you see, bioeconomy is the total use of biological resources and addressing the current challenges of our economy, and also to enable us to cope with climate change. So this is all an integrated way of looking at biodiversity and looking at its potential advantages, no? For as long as we organize ourselves, of course. And this is one statistic that might mesmerize you. This is from a book, no? 2018. So I don't know, I have to look it up, no? 3 times 10, the 62 zeros, no? I have to count the zeros. So it's called onde vigintillion, no? So just as a factoid that shows that that's the number of possible chemical compounds found in nature. In fact, this is another way to understand it, that if you test 1,000 chemical compounds per second, so even if the sun will die out eventually, you will not be able to exhaust, no, wrong spelling there, all possible combinations. So there are a lot of things, many possibilities, but of course you need a lot of technical input and financial input there. That's why, of course, in Africa, they are already developing their bioeconomy strategies. So this is the latest that I have found, January 2025. South Africa is the one leading it. But of course, in the Southeast Asia, we also have that. Thailand started it way back, I think, in 2012, I think. So they have what they call BCG, no? BCG is bioeconomy, circular economy, and green economy. And of course, Malaysia have their own bioeconomy corporation. Indonesia also is developing its own, I think way back in 2010, they have this bio island, but they haven't really come up with a more strategic and coordinated document. And for the Philippines, we are pushing for bioindustry. Bioindustry is like the initial stages of going to a full-blown bioeconomy. Bioindustry is where you just maximize the use of your genetic resources and develop into new products and processes. It's the biotechnology part of maximizing genetic resources. In fact, I have an acronym for bioindustry. I call it in the project that I'm with now. We call it biotechnology-enabled industrialization, organized intensively nationwide, done using sustainable tenets reckoned yearly. Oh, how do you like that? I got that while walking around. No? So I have other acronyms, but ask me later. No? So again, bioindustry for the Philippines, I think is one good strategy because we are also rich in biological resources, and we have, of course, this is another rationale, similar to the discussion there. No? Of course, Biology can be engineered to produce complex materials, etc. And of course, ability to restore supply chains. Of course, let's discuss later this Liberation Day, whether it will impact us or whether we'll be liberated from something. And then, of course, with these challenges for climate change and all other things, we need, no? We need to have a bio-based economy pronto. But the question is how. And of course, when we analyze the Philippine setting, this is what government agencies are currently doing. This is latest, from my own assessment of what's happening. The Philippine Economic Zone Authority has been establishing these KIST parks. Not KIST, KIST, Knowledge, Innovation, Science and Technology Parks. In fact, they have a planned KIST park in Davao City. There's a lactic acid facility. Lactic acid from cassava. Cassava, yung sa Bisaya, balanghoy. No? Of course, we use it as biofuel, but they are trying to develop that facility to develop polymers. Polymers are things that you can make a lot of products from. No? And of course, they're asking for a loan from ADB on that. No? And then, of course, we have also this, we have a new secretary, no, from the UST, Science and Technology. He has this PROPEL program. PROPEL program is the latest iteration of the Philippine Development Plan goal of promoting our science, technology, and innovation capacity. And now, because there are a lot of products that have been funded by the UST through the years, but now they want to see how it will mature and sell in the global market. And of course, NEDA, because we have a law on national innovation, Republic Act 11293, they are promoting the concept of Philippine innovation. Like Filipinos, integrating its own networks and developing innovative products. And of course, we have the Tatak Pinoy Act by DTI. They also promote Filipino entrepreneurs and trying to gather export, to capture export markets. And of course, DNR. DNR is the ministry, the government that dictates how our resources are to be used. And DNR is the one that will push for ABS. ABS agreements are the ones wherein if you need, like take for example that Davao lactic acid facility to be set up in UP Mindanao. They will source their cassava from some farmers. Of course, they will usually buy it from farmers. But farmers usually sell it for a price, then nothing else. But with ABS, when you access, you negotiate for benefit sharing, those farmers in Davao can still ask for additional benefits, like, for example, maybe capacity building, healthcare, training, women empowerment, etc., etc. So those are the things that ABS agreements will enable communities to do when they negotiate with their suppliers. And that's what we're trying to mainstream, with the DNR project that I'm a part of. So again, it's for every utilization of a biological and genetic resource, you have to negotiate what benefits are feasible. Of course, you cannot ask for the moon yet, no? And of course, one possible benefit that you can capture is for some, if you want to join a particular, for example, that lactic acid, and then the polymer becomes a part of a product that's, let's say, being a part of Apple packaging, for example, and it will be in China. Of course, let's set aside for a moment this discussion on the tariffs of all these countries going to the U.S. Maybe just send this to Europe or other Latin American countries. You can negotiate from that manufacturer in China certain terms, wherein you get some aspects of the technology and develop your own capacity. And that's what ABS agreements, that's what enables you to do these things. And eventually, in totality, that will promote equity and fairness. At least that's what we think. Because right now, like what we've seen in Zambales, the AITA that sells banana leaves that's being sent to Japan and South Korea, they only get a very small price and nothing else. And ABS agreements enables communities to negotiate for better terms. So that's the essence of an ABS agreement. And we hope to ASEANize that. We have to spread it around ASEAN. And for ASEAN, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, they have good ABS measures. In fact, in the ASEAN, it's Vietnam that has a lot of ABS agreements wherein they were able to leverage their resources for better terms for their communities. So again, to sum up where we are going, you have a lot of biodiversity. We can leverage it to develop ASEAN's bioindustry. And this is done through an ABS agreements, wherein you can capture elements of the global value chain on key bioproducts. And of course, once you have a lot of bioindustries, eventually you can push for a ASEAN-wide transformation. That's why you become bioeconomy. And I think all eyes right now is on Brazil, because everybody will go to Brazil. I'm sure most of you are going there, to Belém. Book your ticket now, it's getting expensive, I'm told. Yeah. Because some NGOs want me to join them, but I'm only stuck training NGOs on this, on how to monitor these meetings. No? And of course, even Brazil has released this, I think last year, high-level principles on the bioeconomy. So everybody is going there. In fact, Brazil has a 3-level notion of bioeconomy. They use it bioproduct stage, bioresource, and bioecology. So I think the full-blown notion, expression is bioeconomy, where it's economy-wide. You transform your energy, your solid waste, etc. But for now, Philippines, our proposal is just to zero in first on bioindustry. Because we have a lot of that right now. We have Tuklas Lunas. Tuklas Lunas is a DOST project which funds state universities like certain biological resources, like example in Mindanao. Those ferns, pako, they develop it into certain ointments. So you see, in fact, those are the things that can be pushed, scaled up higher. So again, you can look at this website, no? So everybody's going there. So again, we go to the finale. I'm close to my talk. So this is what I will be proposing, no? Of course, it's for you to consider, to discuss, and what will it contain? This one. In fact, I wanted to write the full declaration, but maybe that's too much, no? It's not part of your TOR. And of course, no, because I think I just want to tease out the idea, because I'm sure you can update it much better, because you're the one on the inside. I'm just on the outside looking in, and I don't have a full grasp of the realities going there. But at least I have some outline of what you may want to push as chair. No? So again, we have these deep global challenges, this Liberation Day, woe to those who have been imposed tariffs on. I think when I listen to Filipino financial experts try to understand what the 17% tariff is, I don't know. It has no basis. But I think we need to organize. I think that the takeaway there should be we should organize ourselves better. And of course, maybe not aim for the U.S. market for now, but we have a lot of other markets. No? But I think that the important thing that we have, because this is biodiversity, we are rich in biodiversity, but what are we doing about it except wasting it? No? So we need to organize ourselves. We have a very bright set of people across ASEAN. So that's why the aim is to develop biodiversity-based industries, and to get that going is we need to first set up an ASEAN bioindustry roadmap. It's the roadmap wherein we organize all bioindustries across all ASEAN and maybe identify our strengths, and then pool together our capacities and aim for bigger markets and aim for economies of scale. And then, of course, these milestones for bioeconomy development is a long-term process wherein maybe 20 to 30 years, but eventually we will attain bioeconomy development. Because we start with bioindustry, but then we follow through. But this is one other aspect that I want to elaborate, because it's good I was able to attend. We have a law, RA, I think 11995, the PENCAS, the Philippine Ecosystems and Natural Capital Accounting law. It's a way wherein we will now develop the numbers on how much our resources, biological natural wealth is worth, and use it for further economic ends. But I want to go to the next part of it, because in that IRR discussion, there's this section on policy use and application. So all these national capital accounting projects will do is figure out how much all these things are worth. But what will you do with those numbers? So we are discussing even with ACB, like developing a biodiversity finance instrument. And I have in mind maybe you remember this KEDAN. KEDAN is a warehouse receipt. It's a receipt that shows a certain quantity of sugar in your warehouse, and that's you can trade it. So depending on how the law is set, you can develop a set of instruments that you can trade. You know, there's talk a lot about carbon trading. I saw a contract on a carbon rights agreement. It's so lopsided. For the first 2 years, a community waves away all its rights for the next 2 years, and they will just receive an amount. And that amount is so minuscule to the amount that those carbon cowboy, we call it, will get. So there is a need for an instrument to level the playing field. And I think this is where ASEAN can come in, no? As a policy facilitator or policy launderer, no? From the global thing. There's a lot of capital accounting effort going on. Even the EU has a project with the ASEAN sociocultural community. But I look at their documents, I think they will yield results 2 or 3 years from now. And again, I think this is just to fast track it, that in between all those natural capital accounting numbers, of course, you will be mesmerized, like 43 trillion, etc., etc. But what will we do with that? Can we convert it to specific amounts of money? So that's why this is where this will come in. Within the ASEAN, looking with the ASEAN finance ministers have their own working groups. And that's where they will try to fine-tune this. And that's all. Thank you very much. Sige. Ayaw po. Sige.
Thank you very much, Attorney Ping, for your insightful presentation. At this juncture, we open the floor for comments, suggestions, and clarifications. To be acknowledged, please raise your hand and proceed to the microphone stand located in the center aisle. So to our guests joining via Facebook Live, you may use the live chat feature to send your questions, and kindly state your name and affiliation before asking your question so that we may properly recognize you. So the floor is now open. Is there any questions from the audience? Sir?
Sige, kahit Tagalogin niyo muna and then I will translate.
Sir? Sir?
Good morning, sir. I'm Nathan Borla from the Foreign Service Institute. I'm a researcher from the Blue Economy Studies section, sir. Sir, maraming salamat po sa inyong presentation, sir. Marami po akong nakuhang bagong impormasyon po, no? I've been reading about ito pong yun nga po, yung natural wealth po natin pagdating sa marine genetic resources po, no? Especially in relation to the BBNJ agreement. Yes. With that in mind, sir, with the nation's wealth in marine genetic resources, I believe, sir, that our regulatory framework in the Philippines is governed by an executive order in 1995, and this was further operationalized by a department order under the DNR, I believe. So, with that in mind, sir, what legislative or institutional gaps do you think we need to address or improve in the Philippine implementation of access and benefit sharing principles, particularly with regard to MGRs or marine genetic resources? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Actually, we have proposed a bill in the House. No? Of course, it used to be called Philippine Genetic Resources Access and Benefit Sharing. But we are aware of the BBNJ and we are aware of the WHO Pandemic Treaty and the core mechanism there that will enable us to gain wealth is ABS. It's in BBNJ, it's in Pandemic Treaty, it's a very contentious issue. So we have amended that bill to PBBM, Philippine Biodiversity Benefits Maximization. Okay, it's not me who proposed that, it's the House of Rep. They want it that kind of acronym. And there's also another measure that we proposed. We call it PAVIDA. PAVIDA is Philippine Agency for Bioindustry Integration and Development Acceleration. Because I think the thing that we need from our biological resources, not only marine, is that we need to focus the effort of government. DOST is into a lot of S&T development, but there's no integration. There's no particularization of bioindustry. In fact, we are trying to push for a Philippine Bioindustry Summit. We're hoping to convince the DOST to include it in the National S&T Week. And I think that kind of notion is the one that you may need in your blue economy. I've seen that bill. I don't know what has happened to it. Of course, there are a lot of components there. We also need to address the aspects of land pollution, which is not really that comprehensively addressed. But I think a good framing is also bioeconomy. You can also use the Kunming-Montreal GBF, because Kunming-Montreal GBF looks at all actions needed to strengthen the bioeconomy, but you need to start somewhere where you can maximize already the gains. And I would suggest ABS or the PBBM bill. I can send it to you, no, to ABS. I will connect people who contacted me so that you can look at that. In fact, we are trying to organize before or right after the election at the House of Representatives a public forum of digital sequence information and ABS, because we have a set of rules which streamlines our processes so that more investors will come in. So that's what we're trying to do. Yeah, I hope that will, yeah.
Okay, so in the interest of time, ma'am.
Sir, good morning po. Thank you po for a very insightful talk. Sir, I'm Jel from the OP under the National Anti-Poverty Commission, sir. And as you know, sir, that we are catering to the 14 basic sectors, sir. And this particular topic really, sir, is essential for us to understand how can we, or maybe, sir, can you further give me more insights on how can we include the sectors into the capacity building framework or actions or any activities, sir, in order to really safeguard our national wealth, sir, including indigenous knowledge, fisher folk communities, women, youth sector, and all of the basic sectors, sir, in a community level perspective po.
Yeah, I think I talked to a group in Cebu, in Katmon. They have this kabog millet that's unique to Katmon. And I try to tell them that, because usually what they're trying to do is just sell the kabog millet. It's a unique kind of alternative to rice. And ABS agreements are one tool that will level off, that will level the playing field between buyer and the community. Yeah. So we hope to mainstream that. ABS. When we go to the areas of the project, people say ABS, then they respond CBN. Yeah, but now we were able to find an acronym, ABS, Access and Benefit Sharing, Control Biopiracy now. So you see. So I am an acronym guy, so throw me at anything. Now we have, by the way, developed a clearinghouse. So if you're a researcher on genetic resources, we have already an ABS clearinghouse. Clearinghouse is comprehensive listing of everyday activities in researches in the nation's genetic resources, holding opportunities for the unobstructed sharing of economic gains. So forgive the G, but it's a clearinghouse. Okay, anything else? Give me your name
One more
and I'll make an
question,
acronym
ma'am.
on it.
Good morning, Attorney Peria. I'm V from the FSI, one of the researchers. This may be a stretch, but if I may ask, because we've had this conversation before with Dr. Ben Malayang III. He is a professor in Silliman University and a research fellow with USAID Fish Right. And he floated the idea of developing resource management system cooperation or using science diplomacy in South China Sea. So I just wanted to know any thoughts or maybe a reflection you have on the idea of using, the conservation of marine biodiversity in the South China Sea as a point of cooperation among ASEAN. Like, is there what is the feasibility of developing a framework on conserving the biodiversity in the South China Sea? Thank you, Attorney.
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but there's actually a UN project on that. It's called South China Sea Strategic Action Program. But before you be allergic to it because of the term, it refers to a geographic space, they call it. Because there's this thing called large marine ecosystems. And South China Sea is one of them. And I think that project already has some assurances from, I don't know, from DFA, but you may have to look at it once again, because I think there's an ongoing project. Of course, it's done by an NGO, but they're pursuing it, but in limited areas, because it's not a nationwide effort, because it's understandable. Philippines don't want to use the term that will imply, accepting all these things. No? But there's a large effort to establish conservation measures. And part of that is to also address, I think the big problem there is pollution, the pollution from land sources, because all of these sites, like for example in Palawan, because of the tourism influx, and the waste just gets dumped in the open sea. And sometimes cruise ships pass there, and sometimes the cruise ships also dump their waste. So you see, there's a need also to address that. But of course, the people running that project will have their work cut out for them. No, I don't know if you're willing to help them out. But I think, no matter the name, I think you just have to find ways to, example, using the blue economy concept. They're toying with the blue economy concept on how to uplift the livelihood of the communities. And they always look at tourism, the handicraft livelihoods. But if you ask me, I would rather that they develop a bio industry, like looking for a university that's researching in that area, like Silliman University, for Dr. Ben Malayang. They have a lot of marine natural products research. In fact, we documented that with my NGO way back in the late 90s, Bill Fenical. They develop marine microbes that I don't know what they develop it into now. So there are a lot of opportunities really to go for a bio-industry focused development. And the bigger picture is the bio-economy frame. Anything else? That's all.
I think that ends our open forum. Thank you very much, Attorney Ping, for your insights and for our audience for enriching the discussion with your questions. At this point, the Foreign Service Institute would like to express our sincerest appreciation to Attorney Peria for his presence and invaluable insights in today's Mabini Dialogue. May I call on our Director General, Attorney Francisco Noel or Fernandez III, to award the certificate and tokens of appreciation to our speaker. Once again, thank you to Attorney Ping. Dagang salamat, sir, for giving us your time and sharing your knowledge and experience in the discussion. Thank you, everyone, for your presence and active participation here today. And as the FSI values continuous improvement, we invite everyone to take a few minutes to answer the customer satisfaction survey because your feedback will help us improve the delivery of our future events. You may scan the QR code found at the back of your program or the one displayed on the screen. So ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our program. Thank you for joining us in today's Mabini Dialogue. And as always, we look forward to having you all in our future events. This has been Jason Cesar and wishing you a great day and restful weekend ahead.